Hello, this is the Monotone Sensors here with a different kind of video. Today's going to be like a remastered of some of my old videos because I believe I don't express or don't say or articulate some of my points in my late my older videos. One video I'm going to do right away is uh, All Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter. Who is right? Now, that initial video was pretty bad. I didn't go into much detail, unfortunately. I usually don't do that. I usually get to the point, and my contentions with it was just the protest. That's part of it. Let me get into it by building the premise of there is an actual right side. Like if I had to choose, I don't think either of these groups are really that great. Just getting that out there. I just want that to be known that both these groups I don't particularly like or agree with. But if I had to choose between, Black Lives Matter or White Lives, All Lives Matter, which one would I choose and why? Kind of like the right side, if there was a quote unquote right side to the discussion. And I still stand by All Lives Matter. Now, someone can explain to me why or how you, I guess, marginalize a group or said groups by saying All Lives Matter. I really don't get this kind of premise or logic because you are including everybody. They want equality. They want all the minorities to be treated equally. So I don't see how anyone's being marginalized by saying all lives matter. Now I've seen many, I guess, memes, if you want to call them that, post about, I guess, situations like a house on fire, and you don't say, well, what about all the houses? Don't they matter? Like that's a very situational. I know I'm repeating some of the stuff I said before, but I think it's uh, important to kind of go over this again. Just saying about that these points, and they're not saying all lives don't matter. We're just focusing on the black ones, but statistically speaking, there's no proof of that. There are just this huge disproportion of black lives being killed. I mean, statistically speaking, I'm not saying these lives don't matter. Okay, I'm just putting that out there too, because I don't want this taken the wrong way. That it's just not cops just like going out there and just killing people, or mostly black people. It's just like they just walk up to them and shoot them in the head. Like they don't do that. I heard people saying like it's a public lynching or a modern, not a public lynching, but like a modern day lynching where if they do anything wrong they get shot and killed. A lot of these are usually justified. Someone just recently, and I think it was in Pennsylvania, was running down the street with a knife chasing the cop. I don't know what else he's supposed to do. I mean, I guess he could have tried to taser the guy, but that's a very he had to act fast. That is just like the clear definition of self-defense. If a citizen were to come and like face that, that would be classified as a justifiable shooting. So I don't see why it wouldn't also pertain to the police officer. I don't see how he could have de-escalated that. He had to think fast, and this guy could have stabbed him and killed him. He was in that like 20-foot range. If you don't know what that is, it's like you can't like target somebody and aim and shoot appropriately within the 20 feet, 21 feet. You can they can get stabbed within that range. That's why it's important to kind of like act fast with someone with a knife. But I digress on that. But to go into further, just not just the looting and rioting, I don't agree with. It's just the I guess the premise, the rhetoric, and just like the whole idea of Black Lives Matter when there's other things that they ignore that doesn't seem like Black Lives Matter much. You look at Chicago, Baltimore, Detroit. A lot of people, black people, are dying in shootings, and I get a lot of the backlash of, well, we're not focusing on that. We're just focusing on police brutality. There's a problem with that. Your organization is called Black Lives Matter, not, Black Lives Matter if, systematic racism exists or police brutality is there. No, you're essentially saying, well, that's a different problem than what Black Lives Matter is about, but the organization is Black Lives Matter. That's like the contention I don't, I guess, correlate. That doesn't logically sound very fundamentally good. Like you're just basically saying, well, they don't matter because they basically get killed by other blacks, and well, that's not a problem, or their lives don't matter. That's basically what I think that what really boils down to it. It only matters if a white person does it, or more particular, a white police officer does. Shoot and kill. There's this a couple weeks. It might have been a couple weeks. It might have been like a month or two ago now, where a black police officer killed another black person for trying to, I guess, grab a gun out of his waist. And that the particular story was dropped pretty fast. I can't exactly remember the situation was. I would have to look into it and look it up specifically where and how it went down. But they didn't even say the guy's race, and they would do that with any other person if it was white. It's like white police officer kills black man. But when a black police officer does it, it's just a police officer kills unarmed black man. And that's one of the big problems I see also. A lot of news articles, and I know that's not really Black Lives Matter problem, it's more of the media, uh, pretty much all lying about certain situations, or not submitting or actually reporting everything else that goes on. Very extremely biased reporting going on, and they don't mention he tried to reach for a gun. They don't mention he tried to reach for a knife, or like any context of the shooting whatsoever. It's just like white police officer kills unarmed black guy. Doesn't matter if he's reaching for a gun. Doesn't matter if he has a knife or is shooting at a police officer with a taser. None of this matters. It's just like they focus on two things: that he was shot unarmed, how many times, and whether or not it was in the back. Somehow that matters. They point that out quite often, and I don't exactly get it. It's like, would have been different if he was facing him. I just no, I will agree. Sometimes it seems excessive for how many shots, but you'd be surprised how many bullets that someone can really take before they stop doing something. I know a lot of people who are high take like 10, 20 shots and they don't fucking go down because it's not like a vital organ that's being shot, and they just still come at people. It's just sometimes PCP, or there's this fucking hopped up on adrenaline or whatever it is. Sometimes like 4 or 5 shots doesn't stop somebody, and they keep advancing. Like that has happened. It's not very often, granted, but usually that's a very dangerous situation where you keep on advancing even though you're getting shot 4 or 5 different times. That's a very situation that they need to act upon, and sometimes like it takes more shots than what some people reasonably think it should, and sometimes it just takes that many shots. I'm not saying it's right or correct or anything like that, but sometimes amount of shots is necessary. Whether or not it is 100% necessary, I don't fucking know. We'll never know that. But you see a lot of what seems to be very justifiable shootings, and there's still protests and riots. Usually riots. I know there's a mostly peaceful protest. There's another contention I have with it when it's really not mostly peaceful. When you see a bunch of freaking buildings and car lots and everything else on fire, that doesn't translate mostly peaceful. There's news reports like this is mostly peaceful protest, and there's fucking buildings on fire and shit in the background. Really? Like it's mostly peaceful and there's shit burning all around you? Like I know that's also a lot of media problems here. Like they perpetuate the divide, and I think defund the fucking news is spot on. I think a lot of these places that perpetuate right side, left side should be taken care of. And I remember just like reporting used to be so unbiased or very close to unbiased that it actually was informative. You go back, kind of got both sides of the situation, but now it's just like they don't say anything about what happened up to the shooting, or is left out, or it's just like they do this narrative like that's all they care about is the person's skin color and how many times they've been shot. It doesn't matter what they were doing before or after or in between. It's just like what the hell? Please highlight this person tried to reach for a weapon, or highlight they tried to reach, advance towards the police officer when with a knife or something like that. And a lot of news agencies don't do that. It's just fucking mind-boggling. And that's separate from Black Lives Matter. But I just like to point this shit out loud, so I don't like about the whole thing. But back to the Black Lives Matter, more with other than like the rioting and looting, and I guess like the mentality of the whole thing, they just don't seem to want to talk about why this is happening. I know like the media perpetuates this a lot, so it seems a lot worse than it really is. Now, I like to talk about stats just a little bit. Okay, just bear with me. Like statistically speaking, they're not being shot at this alarming rate. I think it was like last time I knew it was about 20 unarmed black people and about 60 unarmed white people. Now, statistically speaking, well, there's more white people, so that makes sense. But you can't turn around and say, well, statistically, black people are 3 times more likely to be shot by a police than a white person because their population percentage is lower than whites than say, well, white people get shot more because percentage-wise there are more of them. Like the inconsistent logic here is mind-boggling from some of the Black Lives, I guess supporters. That doesn't make any sense. There's no correlation between these two. You can't have it both ways. They want the cake and eat it too, basically. Like you can't have it both ways, and they do. Like if you take like let's say 300 million interactions, and like half of those are just on black community only, and say 150 million interactions, and 20 people die for unarmed, quote unquote unarmed. There's a big kind of blankness saying what's armed and what's unarmed. Just because you don't have a weapon doesn't mean you're not like reaching for one or not actively trying to use one. Okay, let's get that out of the way right now. Like that's insanely low percentage wise. Just thinking about that's like 0.0001% of all interactions between police. That's an insane number of how low it is to be shot and killed by a police officer. But other way around, it's 18 times. I think it's 18 and a half more times more likely than a black person to kill a police officer than a police officer to kill a black person. That's a huge differential percentage there. It's unreal. I'll link my sources later in the description where I get these statistics, but I'm just like kind of like random numbers right now. There, I think the article speaking said 600,000, but I reduced that number by half, then half that number. So like just to put it in perspective, how unlikely it is for someone to get shot and killed unarmed while being black. It just doesn't fucking happen, and it's very rare if it does. Let's say even like 100% of these 20 people who died unarmed is under, I guess speculation that they were actually murdered or homicide. Sometimes it's not murder because murder is very hard to prove because it's intent. A lot of people use that word, murdered, and that's not how it works. You might get second degree murder, but that's extremely also hard to prove also. So usually it's homicide, like 90% of the time, because they can't freaking get like enough proof for murder charges usually in that instances. So just that might be some of happen to do with the justice system, but that's another topic for another video. I would like to get to do that. So basically, we have those pretty much issues. Uh, the media is not the Black Lives Matter's fault, but they seem to follow and believe what the media says and does, which is also not really that good. The looting, protesting, and leaving out details, and also echoing these details. I see a lot of posts echoing a lot of these details and them leaving out some of the stuff that's also in here. And they kind of believe these news outlets without, or just waiting. Sometimes that's a really thing I see too. Like they don't wait until there's body cams, like the Pennsylvania one. Just recently, they just went out there and protested and looted and stuff like that without even seeing the body cam footage of what happened. They didn't know. They all he cared about was white guy killed a black guy. That was actually running with him with a fucking huge butcher knife, by the way. But they didn't care about that. They just, it seems like they just want any excuse now to go loot and cause trouble. Like this seems like to be the norm now. Like it doesn't matter what led up to it. Doesn't matter what this person is doing. It doesn't matter if they have gun, knife. It doesn't matter what the person is doing. When it happens when they die, all they care about is a white police officer did it. And how many times they were shot usually. I find that extremely big problems with that kind of like mentality, and it seems like a lot of people buy into this. That's another big issue. Is like do your own independent research and come to a conclusion, but a lot of people don't do that. Uh, it's very hard to get unbiased news, granted, especially in this kind of like environment now, and it's hard to get the other side. And sometimes even if you look up other news sites, they'll say the exact same thing and leave out crazy amounts of detail sometimes, and even to the point of lying to, ship this whole, I guess, divide that they're doing. I remember like coronavirus and also was a big thing with the media and mass shootings. I guess the mass shootings of coronavirus are somehow gone. I don't know what happened to them, but I don't see very much reports on these anymore, which is really strange if you ask me. Like, but to conclude the whole video, I think I've talked long enough about it. Those are pretty much my issues on the whole thing. I don't really agree with any of these groups, but all lives matter seems like, with me, I'd probably say everybody lives matters, or it seems like nobody lives matters. Really, completely honest. But it seems like this group is extremely hypocritical, especially when it comes with other black people lives when other blacks kill them and murder them. It's like, well, that's not the issue. It's police brutality and systematic racism. But maybe that's a problem too. But I don't know. But your organization, as I said before, is called Black Lives Matter, and that kind of sends the message of those Black lives don't matter to you. So why don't you just start the organization for black on black violence? That's basically them not wanting to be accountable for the like that kind of like angle and logical. Like, why don't you do it? Well, no one would care. That's the sad reality of it is. I think no one really would really care about it, and they wouldn't protest or riot or loot or anything like that against them. It's just that's the sad part about it. I think there's this organization that already says Black Lives Matter, so why can't you tackle both of these at the same time? I don't know, but it seems extremely hypocritical not to do so. That's pretty much I have to say. Hopefully I've explained this a lot better and I mumbled a lot. Just kind of went on a kind of a tangent and didn't really explain in my last video. Hopefully this kind of clears up a lot of the issues I have with Black Lives Matter, and hopefully we have an open discussion. Hopefully I have a guest on sooner or later that we'll have a discussion, not debate, because I think debates are really not very enjoyable sometimes, and they can kind of get out of hand. This person particularly is, I think, I would consider a very close friend, and I don't think it'd get too heated or anything like that. So I won't have them on just for a discussion, because I think debates are kind of pointless, and the back and forth bullshit that happens with it. Sometimes you just don't get anywhere because it's kind of stupid. But that's pretty much what I have to say. Please rate, comment, and subscribe.